So first off, just want to introduce myself. My name's Kyle. I work with our gap year team here in Cambridge, Mass. The virtual background that you will see behind me is the actual lobby of our EF office in Cambridge, which is where a good chunk of our gap year team works. We'll talk more about that shortly, but some housekeeping for everybody to start off with tonight is you all are on mute. There's no video, so you can just sit back, relax. The goal here is to help everyone get a better understanding of what is a gap year, what does a gap year specifically look like with EF, and what are some options if you're someone that's exploring this idea? What are some programs that we run? How do those things work? The goal is to give everyone a pretty good high-level overview on the details of our program with an opportunity to ask some questions at the end. So my goal is to give everybody out of here within a half an hour. And if you have some questions, you're welcome. I'm going to hang out for a while afterwards, answer a whole bunch of specific questions. We'll use the chat when we get to that portion, or if it's helpful as we're going, you can feel free to drop those into the chat. Doing a mental check. I think that's all of our housekeeping. All right, fantastic. Thanks all for being here. Let's jump into it. So the first topic that we need to cover is, what is a gap year? There are a lot of interpretations of what this can look like. So we lean on our friends from the Gap Year Association to give us a little bit more of a narrow scope that's really centered around practical professional development or awareness. And I think when we talk about gap year, we're really talking about a gap year that's centered around intention, that's centered around goals, and really helping students to be able to grow or to learn in a way that they're curious about or they feel like will challenge them for a positive growth in the future. So many different types of gap years, but we're really talking about one that's designed to push you. And when we think gap year, we are thinking, and really for our students, we're talking typically between high school and college, but we actually have a good number of students that are joining us along their college journey. So our programs are open to students 18 to 22 years old from the US. So we've seen a lot of students, especially with COVID and how much of a wrench that's thrown into some folks' plans, that maybe did a semester or a year at school and are joining us to get a little bit more clarity around the rest of their college path. So when we think about really why students are joining our program and what they're looking for, we hear a lot of this when we start this conversation with prospective families and students, which is, I should language. I should be going to this school or studying this major or on this certain path. And I think for a lot of students, the challenge is figuring out their place among that, right? Maybe there's things that are expected of them. Maybe there's different pressures that come up, social, societal, etc., that make students feel like they should be going in a certain direction. And I think what I might offer to everyone tonight is to think of more intentionally about what you want to actively choose, right? Whether this choice ends up being college, a gap year, travel experience, something closer to home. A lot of what we're talking about tonight is thinking more specifically and intentionally around your goals. What is it that you want to gain and experience? What are the type of skills and life experience that you think will really help you to take that next step forward? And what are some ways that you can grow that you probably haven't had a chance to do yet? And I think that is one of the core themes that I hear speaking with students is, I feel like I've been, obviously on this path with school and maybe not had a lot of opportunity to grow in the way that I want. And that's really where gap years can be an incredible opportunity. And we talk about them as one of the most customizable forms of education that really exists anywhere. So presenting that framework around goals and what do you want to be choosing if you're a student or if you're a family considering this option. Now, I'd be remiss if we skipped too quickly through college, because there sometimes can be a perception of, well, does a gap year fit with college? Are these two separate paths? And in our lens, we are really saying that gap years are a great complement to college. Most of our students, and when I say that, we're getting close to 95 or above % of our students that are leaving their gap program and either continuing on with university or headed straight to university as well. And I think there's a few reasons. We're fortunate being here in the Boston area. We work and have had a lot of conversations with schools in our area. So we know that there's pretty wide acceptance of universities that are supportive of gap year. It is an incredible rarity that we run into a school that isn't actually at this stage. because we know, and when we talk to admissions officers and counselors, they see the gap year student as someone that is more prepared. They're more prepared to come into that college environment and succeed. They don't need as much support. They don't maybe need as much time to adapt to that independence in life because they've already had something that's pushed and stretched them in that way. And there's actually a lot of data, again, from the Gap Year Association that have tied outcomes around job satisfaction, higher grades at university, and more involved in leadership and activities on campus. So just wanted to present this idea early because we know this is a common question of how these two fit. This is something that if you do have more specific questions, we can check in on at the end of our chat today. Cool. So most of you probably don't know a ton about us as an organization. So let's just start with a few basic backgrounds. So this is our office that I mentioned in Cambridge, Mass. So the majority of our team works between Cambridge and our office in Zurich, Switzerland as well. But one of the cool things about EF, and one of the things that I'm really proud about being a part of this organization, is our global reach, our global presence, and just really what the company stands for and what our organization stands for. So we are an organization that's been in business for 55 plus years. At this point, we have offices in schools in over 100 different countries around the world. Everything that we do is centered around four main areas: travel, academics, language, and exchange programs. We run programs for students starting in middle school and then run programs all the way up to adults. So our gap year programs that we're talking about tonight, it's just one piece of what we do within EF. And probably our biggest strength behind that program is our support and our global presence around the world. So when our students are traveling to Europe or South America or Asia, they're within our EF ecosystem. They're actually traveling to cities where we have EF staff, offices, and schools. And that's one of the hallmarks of our program, is that anywhere a student could be traveling, we have our people there on the ground. So they're either going to be with our staff or they're going to be based around one of our language schools or our offices that are in that city, so that we have a number of layers of support. And it ties into our emergency response, being able to offer 24-hour emergency support for our students no matter where they are. Just a high level, a lot more that we can dive into there. But I know for me, just anecdotally, one of the best parts too is that I get to work every day with people from all over the world. So we're very used to different languages, different backgrounds, different cultures. And I think it's one of the things that makes our days as staff really fun and engaging. And I think for our students, they really get to interact with a lot of different backgrounds and make connections with people in a lot of interesting places around the world. Okay, we are now transitioning into some of the framework of the foundation around how we have designed our gap year programs. So our core tenet for all of our programs, which we're about to get into in probably 2 more slides, is that we want to help students thrive in an ever-changing world. We think that with the amount of choices and opportunities that students are presented these days, that this is probably the most important thing that students have access to. So our educational philosophy in its most simple form can be broken down to giving students the ability to do this in 3 main categories. So the first, we want them to develop and really be living through a growth mindset on a daily basis. Because our programs are international, where students are traveling, they're living abroad, they're living in groups, they're connecting with their own peers as well as locals and other staff throughout the program. Every day, they're really being challenged to live in this growth mindset, which a simple definition would be looking at challenges as opportunities and being able to see and take those experiences as lessons through that. We also know that this is practical application. Like, this isn't a theory where we're in a classroom talking about this. Like, students are out there engaging, problem solving, really being tested and being challenged for growth in a lot of different ways within a supportive boundary. And we'll cover what that looks like. The second piece, super important for what we do, being that our program is completely international, is that we want students to have access to global perspectives. We live in maybe the most interconnected world that's ever existed these days, whether it's college or future work opportunities. having this foundation of global understanding and global competence, it develops students in one lane for their own personal social and skill development, things like empathy and understanding. But it also helps them with skills like communication and adaptability, which we already know our students have proven in the last few years how good they are with them. But this is a way to gain those, but also have a lot of fun, like learn how to connect with people in different parts of the world. And a lot of people are it's more similar than they are different. The last big category here is personal development. Like, we want our students to really walk away from this experience with an increased sense of confidence, competence, ability, clarity around things that they're gravitated towards or that they're gravitated away from. We want them to have that better sense so that when they do make that next transition to university or to a job or whatever they're pursuing in the future, they've got a much better sense for who they are, environments that really work well for them, and what they may want to pursue in the future. So our last category here is that our argument is that if you can develop these three, you're set up to be able to come home and to take action and to really live all of that experience in your next step. All right. So we're starting to transition into what are our actual programs. So this is really important to know. Any program that we are about to cover, the big thing that we do is we're really helping to organize and put all this together. So all of our programs are going to include all of these 6 categories. So that's flights and accommodations, meaning you will start from your home airport, whether that's San Francisco, Dallas, Minneapolis, Kansas City. You'll start from their home airport. We'll take care of everything from there. We'll get you for all of your travel, your accommodations. It's also all of your living, your hotels, living with hosts. There's a couple different style of accommodation that depends on where you are. So we'll cover that. It's going to be a good chunk of your meals, typically between 50 to 80% of your meals, depending on the program. It will be the actual activities and the events on program that you're doing. That's, again, specific to the program you're enrolling in. Then it is pre-departure support. So all of our students are assigned an advisor. That is, think of it like a guidance counselor for your gap year. They're going to work with you from everything on your packing list up to your passport information, payment plans. You're going to have someone that you can go to for any question that comes up. And this is, super important for our families as well, so that you have someone that you can go directly to. And then on top of that, 24/7 emergency support. So we have a worldwide safety team that's going to be on call all hours of the day. We're covered in all time zones around the world to make sure that no matter what comes up, whether it's a student that's feeling a little bit homesick, or if it's something that's a more serious medical emergency, we have systems so that we can respond and get the student help wherever they are. Now, hopefully everybody knows that because you're attending live tonight, if you end up enrolling on any of our programs, can be short-term, semester, or year, you're going to be able to get a $500 webinar discount. So hopefully you know about this. If not, awesome news, right? But just mention this to your gap year consultant when you're working with them after we wrap up today. Just make sure that you talk about this so we can get that sorted out if we end up getting to an enrollment status. So here's our 3 categories of programs. We've broken this down really in terms of length of program and what students are actually doing. We've just tried to design these in a way that is, compelling program around the really 5 main areas that we focus on. So all of these programs will be a combination of travel, language immersion, service learning, internships, and leadership development. So we're about to walk through each of these. I'll give you a high level on some of the different itineraries and options for where you can go. And then we'll talk more about what a day in the life looks like on these modules. So beginning with our short-term programs, what we've done here is we have 2 different categories. We have our Compass and our Impact programs that both of these will range actually between right now 4 to 6 weeks in length, with start dates most immediately in April, May, and June that are coming up this spring. So this is a great option for a student that's maybe looking for something a little bit shorter in length or something that works for their schedule over the summer. Our Compass programs, which right now we're running in Barcelona, Tokyo, and Rome this coming spring, are centered around combining an immersive travel experience in that city. So being able to visit multiple different cities in Spain before landing in Barcelona, same with Rome, and in Tokyo, visiting multiple cities in Japan, and then having the opportunity to live locally, take language classes at the EF school in that city. Those are all cities that we have an actual EF owned, operated, and run school, which sets you up to be able to have an immersive experience where you're not only learning a language, you're living with the host, you're interacting with other students on a day-to-day basis, and you're getting to know the city and the culture. It's probably the best way to not just travel abroad, but live abroad. Get to know the culture and the environment and what it's like to actually, leave your school in Rome and go down and grab an espresso at the coffee stand, and you'll learn why you don't want to sit down at the cafe and you can just grab it at the counter, and how many euros you need to have in your pocket, and being able to just adapt to that culture and have a proper living abroad experience where it's not just simply traveling through and checking boxes of cities while you're there. The second category here is our impact programs, which we've designed to really have a specific focus around community development. So the majority of these are going to be in partnership with some of our service, nonprofit, and NGO programs. So right now, the program that we have open for enrollment is called Sustainable Development in Costa Rica. As you can imagine, it combines 3 different projects, service-based projects, where students are actively working in different communities around sustainability. The cool thing is sustainability certainly pertains to the environment, but students also get to see what does that look like when they're working with students in terms of sustainability and education. What does it look like in poverty alleviation when they're getting to know these communities? And what does it look like in marine and different ecosystems throughout the country? So a lot of travel involved there, a really cool way to see a new culture, travel with a group, and you'll be with our staff the entire time, start to finish, Spanish-speaking field director that's going to help you along there. Okay, so our next category here is probably most relevant for students that are thinking about maybe that more traditional gap time between high school and college, or this is also really popular for college students as well, maybe taking a break or transitioning in their college experience. So right now we have 5 different gap semester itineraries. The goal with all of these is to create a 3-month program that includes travel, 2 different, what we call custom modules, and closing out with a week of leadership development. So if you look on the left here, this is essentially the framework for all of our different itineraries. Then what changes between the 5 of these are the module A and the module B and how those are put together. So let me give you an example. Our first, maybe our most popular right now, is called the Discover semester. So this is our European gap semester that's really centered around giving a student not only the experience of living abroad, similar to what I mentioned in Rome or in Barcelona, but it also gives them the chance to be able to do an internship abroad. So within this semester, they're going to start off by joining us here in Boston for orientation. They'll get to know their group. They'll get to interact with our staff, really get their feet under them before we go abroad. Then this first 2 weeks is European Immersion, which is a 2-week travel excursion visiting London, Paris, Amsterdam, and Barcelona. So students will be led by our staff. We're going to visit all of these cities. We have sightseeing and free time set up in all of those as an introduction to being able to get to know different cities, different cultures. And then we have students living together in hotels throughout that entire time. Then they are going to go into a month of language immersion. They can choose the city and therefore the language that they're studying. So students might choose to go and live in Rome, learn Italian, live with a host while they're there, or maybe throughout high school, you've been taking Spanish and now's your chance to actually go and live in Barcelona and use that Spanish, right? See what it's like to interact with somebody locally and order at the cafe down the street for lunch in between your classes. Still have the opportunity to live with a host while you're there, and you'll have a group of other students. So a lot of opportunities socially, opportunities for travel while you're there. The second custom module, which would be another month, is we set you up with an internship. So students will choose to either live in Dublin or Seville, And then we are going to work with our students to actually match them up for an internship. So a lot of different categories of internships. Our goal when we're working with students is to put them and match them with an opportunity to learn. First and foremost, we want them to learn about the organization or the business that they're working for. We want them to learn about different functions within that organization. We want them to start to identify what are things that seem interesting, what are things that they're pretty sure that they don't want to be able to do in the future. All of those things are really important. We hear all day long when we speak to students um, how they're really unsure about what they would want to study. They feel like they don't have anything practical that they've done. And this is really designed to be able to give them that exposure so that they can have more clarity in making those decisions. The last week of all of these gap semester itineraries, we'll bring all of our students back together at an EF campus in the UK, just outside of London. We're going to run a week called Leadership Academy. So this is a series of different workshops that will be some group, like kind of team dynamics, skill building, and some more individually focused reflection. So we want you to be able to process, like, what have I done? Where have I gone? What are my takeaways from this experience before you head back home from there? And within all of that, you end up getting a lot of cool cities and countries on your list of just travel as well. So that's a framework for this semester, but you can see we have a lot of itineraries that incorporate some really exciting places around the world. You know, the Adventurer ties in language learning in Costa Rica and service in Peru. If you're thinking South America feels really interesting, we know Machu Picchu is just an incredible bucket list travel experience. Some students are really gravitated towards a once in a lifetime mixed opportunity in the Explorer, where they can learn a language and live in Spain or France or Italy, and then go and do service in Thailand. For them, that can be a really good match. If you have questions about semester, this is another really good one that we can talk about at the end of our chat here. Last category is our gap year. So gap year is set up just like a college year would be, with a fall semester, a winter break where students are returning back home for about a month, and then continuing with a spring semester to round out the full year. The coolest thing about the gap year is that it includes all 5 of the main components to what our programs are built around. So it's going to include travel up front, 2 weeks of European immersion travel to start the fall, 3 weeks in Australia and New Zealand to start the spring. Yeah, that's right. Good day. So you're going to visit Sydney, Cairns, North and South Islands of New Zealand. I love this part of our program. It's incredibly unique opportunity. It's incredible balance from some of the more urban time spent in Europe. So that's element 1. The second part is students will do a 6-week language study module. So you can see this is the second component in the fall. On the year, students can choose between any of our language schools, all of those listed on the screen right here. So whether you want to be in Europe or in Tokyo, you can do it. Or in Tamarindo, Costa Rica, Seoul, like really giving students as much choice as possible in the year. After you wrap your 6 weeks of language study, where you're at the EF school in that city, you'll then move into a 6-week service program in one of our 4 service countries. All of that is based, again, around partnerships that we have on the ground with local nonprofits, NGOs. That's an opportunity to learn more about the country, to be able to travel, to get to know the communities that you're working in. And we want students to walk away with a really varied year. So we think that being able to do service that is giving back and developing some of that, cultural understanding is a really key part within the year. After that module, students come home. They'll have, again, about mid-December to mid-January, about a month winter break. Australia, New Zealand, 3 weeks to start the spring. Then students do that 6-week internship. So similar to what I mentioned before, you can choose between any of these cities that we run our internships in, whether it's Dublin, you really like an idea of an English-speaking city, Dublin or Sydney. Maybe you like a city like Stockholm, where everyone will speak English, but it's going to be a little bit more culturally unique, or a city like Tokyo that's kind of a bucket list place to actually live and work for a business there. And then we'll wrap up with that week of Leadership Academy at the end. So Gap year, it really includes it all, and it gives the most opportunities for choice. So I'm going to have one of our alumni. We have a quick recording of Annabelle talking about her experience, and the screen just gives you some highlights for what she actually was. So you can turn sound up. It might be just a little quieter than my voice.
I chose to do my gap year with a company called EF, Education First. The service learning portion in the Dominican Republic was the most life-changing portion of the program, I would say, for me. I got the opportunity to work with a company called Fundamar, and they work to revive coral reefs. So I, having known nothing about coral before going, this just sounded like something that was cool. I felt so inspired by everything that I was doing there. I don't remember ever feeling that way about anything, and by the time I was done with my gap year, I was already pretty sure that I wanted to change my path in life. My biggest piece of advice that I could offer anyone is that it's okay to venture outside of the norm. It's okay to think about things and do things that most people aren't doing.
Awesome. Thank you, Annabelle. Annabelle goes to school up here in Boston now too, and her story was really cool. She was on the track for art school, coming out of her gap year, pivoted, and now she's on studying marine science. So how do you make this happen, right? We get a lot of questions about what the planning looks like, what financials look like. We're going to cover some specific costs as well that were already listed. But really, the biggest difference, if we think college versus gap year, most families that we see are going to be approaching their gap year planning in a multiple different streams. So usually it's a combination of everything listed here. The first would be monthly payment plans and advanced planning. So we are working actively right now with a lot of seniors, as you can imagine, and actually a lot of juniors. I think our average planning time is around a year to a year and a half in advance, knowing that we can set up monthly payment plans so the balance doesn't need to be paid right away. We also have scholarships. We actually have our first scholarship deadline coming up March 15th, March 15th for students thinking about this fall. So that's a really important deadline, just so everyone has that on their radar. We have external scholarships. We've seen, so Tayson, who's on the screen right here with his friend on his head, he actually applied for an external scholarship, was awarded that, and used it towards his GAP program with EF. We've worked with hundreds of families using 529s. There can be a lot of nuance there. That's a really good topic to bring to your gap year consultant that you're working with us, but we've worked with those in many different states. And we've seen some incredible stories of students that are actively working, saving, and funding this on their own. Typically, that advanced planning is going to be your best friend. So if you're a junior, this is really your time to start putting that plan in action so that you can create a payment plan here. All right, folks, thanks for everybody for sticking with us. Only a couple more slides here. I want to give everyone a sense of what does the day in the life look like on each one of the modules and parts of the program that we talked about. So here's a few scenes from orientation that we had back in the fall here in Boston. If you know the city at all, we did some touring and saw different parts of the city, and really it's a time to get to know your group and start to form those connections. It's a little awkward, it's a little new, just like things are at the beginning, but it makes it really fun so that when we start and jump into this, which is European immersion, this is really when it's time to transition into that. I'm on my gap year now. Like, I'm away from home. I'm in this new setting. I'm with this new group of people. I'm seeing, the Louvre, the Eiffel Tower. I'm visiting Borough Market. I'm seeing La Sagrada Familia. All these really iconic bucket list type of destinations. And we built in free time during this 2 weeks so that students can get to know each other and start to really make some of those connections and memories along the way. I'm going to show a quick video. This is actually the roof deck here on the left at our school in Barcelona. Just shows a good, what an afternoon might look like after students are done with their language class, hanging out together. They're right in city center. Makes it really easy before you go back to your host for the evening to just have some time together, maybe grab some lunch, depending on the day. Our schools run different optional activities every day, things like, travel opportunities, visiting different museums, really a lot of different things that will be dependent on the city that you're in and then some photos from our students there. Service is going to be where you are with your group throughout the country that you're in, really working closely with these nonprofits and NGO partners that we have. We've got a pretty rigorous process for how we create these partnerships. We want to be able to drive sustainable and impactful service in any of the places that we're working. But as you can see, bottom right, if you're in Peru, we want to make sure that we get you to Machu Picchu. If you're in Costa Rica, we want you to visit La Fortuna waterfall or the Arenal region and see Arenal volcano. So we want it to be, a good chunk of your time working with these communities and partner organizations, but also a good mix of some travel in there. If anyone is familiar with Costa Rica, this video bottom left will make sense to you. Yes, of course, of Pura Vida from our friends there. Internship, these are just a few stories. We've tried to use social media to give our students and our alumni the best voice, direct voice of what their experience was like. Diego here in Berlin and Summer in Sevilla, really just highlighting some of the different cities that our students have worked in. This is the most independent part of the year. Students are going to live together in typically an apartment style accommodation with 3 or 4 together, sharing a kitchen, sharing a living space, commuting to their internship during the week. We want this to be like you are a young professional in this city, going into work and being able to learn more and obviously develop some skills with that organization you're partnered with. And then culminates with Leadership Academy here. This is our campus at Ash Ridge House that I mentioned. It does have a bit of a Harry Potter feel, if that jumped out to anyone. There's a few scenes, believe it or not, that actually were shot here. Again, we can come back to that later, but this is a time for all of our students to come together, to have really some of that reflection, some time together, and to walk away with clarity around how you can tell your story of this experience. It's going to become a really important part of your gap time, as you talk with your teachers, your professors, your family, your friends too, of just being able to articulate what you did and what that meant for you. So to close, really appreciate everyone walking through. We're about to jump into Q&A. So if there are some Q&A questions, you can drop those in the chat. This is a quote from our friend John here, love John, and our alumni that we had helping us out earlier this fall. Before everyone leaves, I think if this resonated with you, if you feel like, this is something that could be interesting, could be compelling, especially if you are a senior, we operate on rolling admission. So we are actively working with majority of our students at this time of year. We know college admissions decisions are coming out. So typically connect with us so that what would a gap option look like. You can connect with your gap consultant. You're going to get an email from us by tomorrow from your gap consultant offering a chance to be able to continue the conversation if that makes sense for you, so that you can map out what would a program look like. Am I the best fit for a semester, for a year? We can talk more about specific locations. We can also talk more about if a gap experience is the right option for you. We're really familiar with just trying to dig in and understand what your goals are as a student or as a family. How does that fit into potential options as we get into some decision time here in the next few weeks? So I want to thank everyone so much for joining us. If you do have questions, I'm going to start going through this Q&A right now so that you can drop those right into that Q&A, and I'm going to answer some of these live and maybe some of them over text as well. And I just appreciate everyone being willing to jump on here. I know it's a bit of time and commitment to do that. So first question that we had here is, how do the gap semesters work? Are they set, or are they just in the pairings that were shown? So we have 5 set itineraries. It can be a little bit confusing because within those itineraries, there are a few modules where you can actually choose where you're going for a specific part of that. So for example, the Discoverer is one of our itineraries. The first module, students can choose what city they're going to for their language immersion, whether it's Barcelona, Nice, Rome, Berlin. They can choose that. So there is some customization within those 5 itineraries, and our website's going to be the best place to be able to get more information about that. Yeah, great question about visas. The cool thing is the majority of where we travel, you don't need visas. If you do need visas, we will help you to get them. Legally, we cannot get them for you, but because you have that assigned advisor, your advisor will walk you through the process to be able to get visas if you need them. Visas are always changing. They're always changing. So it's a little bit tricky. I wouldn't commit to anything of like this country you should expect to have that for. But by and large, a lot of our European countries and for the time we're traveling for, you don't need those. Question about scholarships here. Yeah, how accessible or how our scholarships work? First piece about scholarships is you need to be enrolled in our program to apply for our scholarships in particular. It's our mechanism so that we can obviously give those awards to our students. So typically students are making a commitment to the program and then applying to scholarships from there. And then there's some variance because there's a few different scholarships and they apply specifically for our semester and our year programs. But we have an average. This can change. It really varies program to program, year to year. But between around 20 to 30% of students are being awarded scholarships from us. And then that's not including any external scholarships. Question here about just student loans, what that would look like. So we don't facilitate any of that. We know students have gone the route of looking into loans. It's not the same rules as like a financial aid within a university where they have that system set up and defined. So that would be something you would have to go to on your own through a financial institution, through a bank, whatever way you were to procure those. And then we could work with you from there. Yeah, so the way that we have a question about how do you choose your internship? Should we choose it on the city or what you want to intern in? We want to talk a little bit about both. This is where you would want to discuss really your goals with your gap consultant. Let's start there. What do you want to get out of the internship experience? We do have some nuances city to city, but by and large, we've really tried to set internship up so that we can accommodate different types of internships in all of the cities that we place our students into. With that said, the biggest thing that's going to impact your experience wherever you are is the city. It's the culture, it's the people, it's the size of the city, it's the language, it's the food. That's everything that you're experiencing on a day-to-day. So I think that being mindful of where you want to be can be a great place to start because so much is really impacted through the lens of the culture, the people that you're with. And then we have a good range of the types of internships in each city. We have a question about getting a consultant. So you should have gotten an email from us for registering from today from a gap consultant. And our gap consultants will be following up via email to just introduce themselves and see if you want to continue the conversation from today. So keep an eye on your email from our gap consultants. They will reach out to be able to continue and set up time to be able to talk with them. So we had a question about Korea as a destination, but not for the gap semester. That is true. Right now, we have Korea right now is only in the gap year. It's a little bit of a double-edged sword. We have so many places we travel to. We really have to be mindful about how we pair all of them together. Flights, time zones, all of the logistics. There's a lot that goes into that, as you can imagine. So unfortunately, the way that Korea is set up would be just in the gap year at the moment. All right, so we had a question about COVID guidelines, the magic question. There's a great page on our website right now that outlines our COVID policies. I think our biggest guideline is that we are following what we need to in each country locally. And that's really what we start with. We've done a lot to add on to that. We ask all of our students to be vaccinated. We, obviously are following mask protocols where those are still in effect, which by and large, airports, indoor, a lot of places still have those in, but those have also changed throughout the year. So, we're really trying to be and pay attention. And that's part of us having our team, our emergency team that looks at those things so that we can be up to date with COVID guidelines and then making sure our students know what they are so that they can follow them from there. That's a fairly general answer. I would agree with you on that. We can be more specific when we start to talk about specific locations, specific programs, and we can give examples of like, what are our students doing today on program, and what do we project for the coming year? Question about if you can just do language study the whole year. There is an option to do that. It's a little bit different than what we talked about today, but if you just were interested in only language, talk with your gap consultant. We can help talk with you about program options for you there. Yeah, great question here from Casey about credits. Yes, so the way that credits are set up is that our semester, year, and short-term programs, they're all accredited. So way that it would work is if you wanted to get the credit that we have, all that's laid out on our website, right? There's a drop down that says college credit. You would talk with your advisor. They're going to add that onto your program. The best part about it is most of what you're actually doing to get that credit is just participating on program and being on program, being an active participant. It's not like you are also enrolling in an additional online course. There's some work that you will do post-program that is online, but a lot of your credit is getting is from what you're actually doing every day on program. And it's a really easy process for us to add that on. So if you're interested in college credit, talk with your gap consultant again. They can help you with that. Okay, for the gap semester, we have internships. As of right now, our internships are just in Dublin and Sevilla. We have internships in Berlin and Stockholm on the year program, but not on the semester at the moment. Again, I would talk with your gap consultant. If you're really keen on certain cities, they can talk with you about like what we have open and what's going to be the best match for your goals and some of the more nuanced differences there. These are awesome questions, folks. Thank you so much for dropping in there. I'm doing my best to keep up. So thanks for your patience if I'm still getting there. For scholarships, do we need to apply for Fafsa? You do not. We are completely separate from what a traditional Fafsa 4-year university scholarship process would look like. Our process is laid out right on our website. If you go to, there's a scholarships page and it says exactly what the scholarships are and what the prompts are. But it's a merit-based scholarship off of the application that you submit, and we give a few different options for what you can submit. Question of, can I join if I'm in college? Absolutely. We have our spring semester students that departed, what's today, Thursday, that departed last weekend. And we had about 25% of those students that are in college or just graduated, actually, like somewhere along their college journey. So we're really familiar with working with students that, again, are transferring, are taking a semester off. Again, we know COVID has been a massive impact in what the traditional college journey has looked like. So we've worked with a lot of students on that. Typical costs, what a scholarship is going to cover, it's usually between $2,000 to $5,000 per student for their program, for award. We had another question about the European immersion, which is right now, London, Paris, Amsterdam, Barcelona. Right on our website, there's an itinerary that maps out where you're going and what you're doing for that. All right, I'm jumping into the chat here. Sorry, folks, I'm just getting caught up. All right, so we covered college credit. We covered, okay, so enrollment process for Molly. So we have all of our students connect with Gap Consultant, and then they'll walk you through. We do have some onboarding processes, and our team that kind of takes a look at some documents that are final enrollment for actually securing your spot. So your Gap Consultant will explain exactly how that works. We had a question. Yeah, so if you're a student that's thinking about joining after graduating college, our age requirements are between 18 to 22 years old. So if you're still within that, like I just mentioned, we've got students that graduated the past few months that are on program with us right now today. Yeah, so we have a question here about COVID quarantine? This is a good question. This is a bit of a detailed answer, but one of the strengths for us as an organization is that we can pivot and adjust quite easily to different countries' requirements or restrictions. So what that means is that as we have evaluated where we're traveling throughout the year, one of the things that we're looking at for each country is what are their specific requirements. If quarantine is one of them, we are probably going to be looking really closely if that makes sense for us to still travel to that country. Our school of thought here is that we would rather change an itinerary or remove one city or one country so that students don't have to quarantine, because we know you don't really want to be spending your time or your money to need to quarantine. So we have adjusted our itineraries a little bit throughout this past year to try to work around needing to have any mandatory quarantines where any of our students are. And then because everyone needs to be vaccinated, that has drastically reduced. If a student was to test positive, we will get them set up in a hotel or in a comfortable residence, or if they need medical attention, we'll take care of all of that so that they can rejoin the program as soon as possible. Again, there can be a lot of nuances for what the timing looks like there, but in generally with the vaccine, it's just been a few days typically for students going through that. Question here for what students, so if a student is an 11th grader in high school, so we accept students starting at age 18. So they would need to be 18 years old in order to join us. If that fits, and just so you know, we work with a lot of juniors in planning so that they can travel once they graduate or once they're 18. And that could start at a summer program or a short-term program, or maybe it's a proper year semester after graduation. Yeah, a question here about 529s. 529s are incredibly nuanced, and it's hard for me to discuss specifics because I have to first give the caveat that I'm not a tax expert and I can't give any specific financial advice. So that's our first disclaimer and prereq there. We have seen varying state to state and based off of different guidance that families have gotten from either the account or the fund manager with their 529, that's going to be the best source of truth for how to be able to use this. But in general, you know, we've seen students that have used either a portion or a vast majority of the total program cost from a 529 account. So that can change depending on year or semester. This would be something that is probably worth discussing specifically with one of our gap year consultants, just so that we can give you a little bit more of a specific and detailed answer with that as well. The question of if students are ever on their own, no, they would never be on their own. They're always going to be with a group. They're going to be either with roommates or with their actual group and service, or their group of students in the same city as them for internship. They will always have group, and community for us is really, really important. And we want that to be consistent. We want consistency in the group that they're with and support. We always want you to have EF's support for whether it's just, hey, I'm feeling a little bit homesick today, or if it's something a little bit more serious and medical attention related. Question about what is a 529? It's a specific type of account. If you don't know what it is, you probably don't need to worry about it right now, but it's a specific type of savings account that some families use. We had another question, what's my favorite place I've ever been? I don't know, it's the next place. I loved traveling to South America so I had a gap experience myself. It's part of why I really believe in what we do and this time in life and the opportunity to travel and for growth. It was a massively important part of my own journey post high school and through college. I did my experience in South America, in Chile, and that was fantastic and really unique. But I've also loved traveling to South America, not South America, to New Zealand. I love the outdoors, so that really calls to me, but same with traveling to Italy is definitely one of my favorites. And yeah, I'm hopeful for more places. All right, I'm just checking back through our questions here. I think that we're getting there. We had a question. Oh, how many students usually? Yeah, that's a good question. Think of students on each like module that you're on, like European immersion, language, service, internship. I would say an average of like between 25 to 40 is a pretty good guess. And that can fluctuate a little bit. Service is probably a bit smaller than that actually, but that's a general range. Pretty decent sized group that you're with there. Itineraries for 23, 24, we're always making slight tweaks, but I think the general framework will change. And we do have some new programs coming out later this spring as well. Questions about what are internships students have done? Yeah, this is a cool one. Okay, so we have had students that have worked at radio stations, PR agencies, ad agencies, digital marketing agencies. They've worked in finance. They've worked for real estate, actually real estate like private equity company. They've worked in compliance on a legal team. They have worked in graphic design. They've worked at museums. I'm thinking through different students in my head as I'm going through this exercise. What am I missing? Those are probably some good examples right there. And we have different categories. Those are all ones where it's a fairly varied day to day, and what you're learning is very applicable. So we want to try to give students access to things that can have a lot of overlap and really can transfer well in the future. We want you to get exposure to things. You know, marketing is a core part of every business in any industry that ever exists. So we know that those type of opportunities, if you are at least curious in marketing, it can be a really good place to start to just learn some of the basics and functions there. We also know some students are more creatively driven, and something like graphic design or in the arts might be a better fit. We've had students work with kids actually too, a good number of like nonprofits or working with kids. So those would be some, I think, pretty solid examples for you to have there. We had a question, can we help a student apply to a German university? Interesting, we probably can. The logistics might be that you probably need to apply on your own, but you'll walk away with a certificate, and you can get letters of recommendation from your advisor as well. We have a few students that are abroad, that are studying abroad in the Netherlands, in Italy, and in Germany as well. So we're certainly familiar with students doing that. Yeah, we had a question, is there always someone from EF with students? So you will always have EF presence with you. So when you're in service, you are with your field director the whole time. They're traveling with you, living with you, they're there with you the whole time. During your language module, so if you're living in Barcelona and taking language classes, our school has all of the EF staff, our teachers, our housing director, our activities coordinator. You're going to be living with most likely a host. We also have residences, which is more of a dorm style accommodation there. So if you're with your host, you're with another roommate, another EF student as a roommate. So your EF staff isn't there at the host, but the host is someone that's been vetted and background check. And then you'll have the school that you can call, you'll have your advisor that you can call, and then you'll be going to the school the next day and during the day. So it's really, that becomes your home base. And then your internship, we have an internship coordinator in each city that becomes your go-to person for everything. They'll help you get into your apartment. They'll walk you through your commute. They're a person that you can check in if questions come up along the way. And another question here about percentage of applicants. Yeah, so I think the biggest thing about like acceptance is that because we're on a rolling admission, it can depend like when programs fill up. You know, certain cities that become more popular, and that can vary year to year, but we always know, for example, internships are popular. Internships in Dublin are popular. Service in Thailand is really popular, as well as Costa Rica. So those would be ones just anecdotally off the top of my head. It's why we usually encourage students to connect with our consultants so that they can give you a better estimate of, you know, where are we at in this process and how can we help make sure that we give you the best chance to get a spot at a program that you are excited about. Casey asked about connecting with people beforehand. Casey, great question. In the next, I think in 3 weeks from now, we're going to be having an alumni panel where, similar to this, we'll have a few alumni in Zoom that you can ask questions to. They'll talk about their experience. We get a lot of requests to talk with alumni, and it is incredibly difficult logistically to match up those conversations, different time zones. Everyone's busy, school schedules, work schedules, all of that. So we found these alumni panels are a much better solution so that you can drop in, ask questions, and hear from some of our alumni as well. All right, folks, I think we're getting there. I think we're just about. Amazing. I think we covered all of these so far. So I'll give just like a last minute here so that we can wrap up at the top of the hour. Yeah, Molly, that's meeting other students. So what I was just mentioning is we have, we're going to have an alumni panel, which will happen in 3 weeks. We're going to be launching that next week. We'll have the date out, the registration out, so that students can speak with some of our alumni and hear their story. We get a lot of requests for students to talk with alumni, and the logistics of matching those up are incredibly difficult. So we've created alumni panels so that our alumni can come, they'll speak, they'll talk about their experience, and then they'll answer any questions that interested prospective students have as well. So keep an eye out. That's going to be in about 3 weeks, mid-February, and we'll have the registration on our website, and your GAP consultant can help get you signed up for that. We have a question. Does anyone want to live there after they've gone through the full program? I think that it sparked a lot of interest in living abroad in different ways for our students. And we have had some that have gone back and done more travel or done some time abroad as well. Yes. And so Casey, you can attend the alumni panel, talk to your GAP consultant, because there's a few ways we can match you up. And if you're enrolled, you will start to have sessions with other enrolled students to start to meet them and get to know them. Your advisor is going to set that up with you in the weeks prior to departure. So you'll have a chance to hear from alumni as well as meet other students that are enrolled in your program. Hey, Gabby, question about safety. Safety is maybe the most important thing for us, and we didn't talk about it in super detail just because there's so much to cover. I think with safety, there's a few pages on our website. There's a lot of ways that we tackle safety. Really, it's us having systems in place to be able to make sure that our students have resources and have knowledge and have really the training to be able to be successful on their own to start with, and then they'll have EF staff and support wherever they are. So, I mean, we've done this for a long time. We've seen a lot. We've been through, a lot of iterations of how we manage safety. And I think what I usually find being the most helpful is, Gabby, if you connect with your GAP consultant, they can talk to you more specifically about what safety looks like on the program that you're considering, because safety looks different if we're in Rome versus Costa Rica, and it looks different if you're in service versus internship. So I usually find doing that on a one-to-one is really effective, so you can have the details and so that your parents know too, and you can set up a conversation with you and your parents together. All right, folks, we just got to the top of the hour, so I want to be mindful of everyone's time. Thank you so much for staying in here. You'll hear from our team by tomorrow. Send an invitation to continue the conversation. Hopefully this was helpful, and super excited that everyone's at least considering this idea. I think gap years are amazing, and I think that you will see gap years are going to become more and more of a thing every year that we go forward. We're already seeing that trend, and we just know that a lot of students can really benefit from a more focused time of development to set them up for what's to come. So everyone have a great night. I'm super excited for all of you, and we'll hopefully chat soon. Thank you.